Hello, everybody. I'm Tim Selby from Heart of Steamboat, and I'm here on a beautiful summer afternoon. And I want to talk about relaxing. And not like relaxing, like sort of in the physical sense, like I might do right here, sitting back, kicking back, that physical relaxing. I want to talk about sort of deep spiritual relaxing that might be seen as a deep form of faith. So I want to ask you this question. Have you ever carried water? Like carried a significant amount of water a significant distance? Because if you have, you realize that is not something you want to do. Water is heavy. Water is a burden to carry. And in the fourth chapter of the Gospel of John, there's a story about a woman who goes to a well. Now, this woman, she has to carry water. She has a burden to carry. But that's not the only burden this woman has. See, we find out a lot about this woman in the story. She goes to the well at noon. Now, that's not a time you want to go to the well in the heat of the day to do hard work in the heat of the day. The other day, I went bike riding, and I went at 12:30, and I think what was the hottest day of the year at that point. And I was like, I got to go. You know, and I've seen some people, sometimes you see people in the middle of the day at that hot point, like riding bikes around and doing this and that. And sometimes I look at them and I think, well, that's dumb. But I think it in like a loving Christian way, right? But it's not dumb. It's just we have reasons. I had a reason I had to go riding at 12:30 that day. It's when it worked for me. There's always a reason we do something. This woman ended up at that well to do that hard work at the heat of the day for a reason. And it's often been talked about maybe she was trying to avoid people because that's a time when not many people would be there. Because in the course of the story, we come to discover that this woman has had 5 husbands. She's with someone else now, but the first 5 were her husbands. I don't know how you do that. How do you get through 5 husbands? Maybe there's death involved. Maybe there's abandonment. I don't know how you get past 5 husbands, but I know you don't get there without a lot of pain, without a lot of struggle, without a lot of hardship. Like, how did her life get this messed up? And can you imagine how people would have talked about her? You know, maybe was she cursed? Was she super unlucky? Was she evil? Was it her fault? Was she like, but you know how she might have been talked about and treated poorly. And she knew that. And she heard that. She heard the talk. So maybe she wanted to go to that well at noon because she was tired of hearing it. And she knew she wouldn't encounter the other women. She knew she wouldn't encounter a lot of people at the well at that time of day because it was too hot and the burden was too much. So she found her way there. You know, sometimes going to church can sometimes remind us of all the things that are wrong with us. If I was to ask for you to raise your hand, if you feel like you pray enough, or if you feel like you pray well, like you're really good at praying, I bet not many hands would go up. Or what about, do you read the Bible enough? Do you understand the Bible enough? Do you have enough Bible knowledge? What about faith? Do you have enough faith? You got all the faith you could use, or could you use a little bit more faith? What about if I asked, are you patient? Are you really great at having patience? Or are you really great at forgiving people who have hurt you? You good at that? Do you serve enough? Do you serve enough? Do you put enough back into the world? Do you put enough on the plate at church? Do you all these things, that we might think we don't do well enough or we should do more might get highlighted when we go to church. Sometimes church can be a place that we talk about our faults and failings and our sins. And, if we want to start talking about our faults and failings and all those kind of things, I don't know if you're like me, but for me, like that would be a long list. There's so much to talk about. And if we're talking about all those kind of things, that can begin to feel like really quickly. That can feel like a burden. That can feel like a heavy load to bear. That can feel like a heavy thing. And I don't think that's what Jesus wants for us. Jesus said, "Come to me, all you who are weary and heavy laden, all you who carry heavy burdens, and I will give you rest." I think Jesus wants to come not to add to our burden, but to give us rest and to offer us water. This woman, when she ends up at that well on this day, she ends up encountering Jesus. And when she gets there, they're both thirsty. Jesus is thirsty physically. It says he's tired from his journey and it's noon. He's hot and tired at the well. And this woman, her thirst is more maybe of the spiritual sort. But they end up there and they sort of need each other. Because in this story, Jesus doesn't have a bucket. So he's by himself thirsty at a well. He doesn't have a bucket to get the water. The woman has a bucket that she can draw the water that Jesus needs. But Jesus has the water or the life that she really needs. And it's beautiful because Jesus is not scandalized by this woman in the slightest. Jesus isn't worried that she's a woman. He's not worried that she's had 5 husbands. He's not worried that she's a Samaritan and Samaritans and Jews don't mix and mingle. He's not worried about any of that. He just wants to connect with this woman. He wants to share water with her, which means to share life with her. And in the course of their encounter at that well, the woman ends up saying to Jesus, "Give me this water." He tells her about this water and she says, "Give it to me." And when she says, "Give me this water," you know what Jesus does? Here's where Jesus says, "Tell me about your husbands." Oh. You see, she says, "I want the water." And Jesus presses right on her point of pain. He points right to the point of her deepest woundedness, her deepest pain. It made me think about like when you have a cramped muscles or painful muscles. Sometimes, I'm not a doctor here, but sometimes one of the treatments for that is that you put pressure on it. You put pressure on that cramped place, because when those muscles are cramped, the blood flow is reduced and there's not getting as much blood in there. But when you press on it, you inhibit the blood flow even more. And then when you release, the blood rushes in and the blood rushes in and fills it more deeply and eases that pain. It's what I think Jesus does for this woman. He points right to her point of pain because Jesus needs her to know that he knows her in that place. He knows her in her woundedness and her struggle. And he embraces her and he connects with her right at that spot. And because Jesus knows her pain, her woundedness, and embraces her there, I think this woman is able to relax. She's able to settle, to relax, maybe to breathe. I read a piece on this. It was in a sermon by Nadia Bowles-Weber, and I wanted to read you what she said because it really struck me. She talks about a Catholic theologian by the name of James Allison, and she says this: James Allison describes faith not as intellectually ascending to a set of theological propositions, but he describes faith as relaxing. Faith as relaxing. This really struck me because there's not many people that talk about faith as relaxing. So he goes on to say, relaxing in the love and the presence of God, in the way that we relax in the presence of someone we are certain is fond of us. When we are in the presence of someone we are certain is fond of us, we're funnier, we're more spontaneous, softer, and less defended. If I know for sure someone likes and loves me, there is no reason to pretend anything. Allison says faith is relaxing. I think this is what happened with the woman at the well. I think the living water found a crack in her defenses and trickled down to her lowest point, to her deepest wound, her greatest need. And she finally exhaled. In fact, she relaxed so much, she totally left her water jar at the well. I Like, what a beautiful description there she offers us of this water that finds its way to its deepest point, to our deepest woundedness, to the deepest place we need life and refreshment and renewal, and allows us to relax. I don't have to achieve something or attain something or have enough faith or be a better Christian or do all these things. I just have to know that the living Christ meets me where I am and wants to bring me to more fullness of life. Isn't it beautiful? I don't know what your wounded place is. I don't know what your place of pain is. But I pray that that living water of God would find its way down to your deepest point and to mine, to find its way into places maybe we don't even know we need it, and to sink into those places, soothing us, refreshing us, and breathing new life into us. And maybe if you're in a really tough spot right now, sometimes we might think, you know what? I'm in a tough spot. It's really hard to kind of relax in that spiritual way right now. Maybe it's when we're in those tough places that we need that unclenching form of faith the most. Because if you're in a tough place, God's not going to help you more if you pray harder, or if you try to have more faith, or if you rally 1,000 people to pray for you. All those things are great. But God's not going to help you more if you do more or try harder or try to attain more. God is present with you in the midst of your struggle. And if the road ahead of you is difficult, God will be with you all along the way. There's not something you can do to make God be with you more or get it right or do it better. And there's nothing you can do to make God not be with you on that journey as well. The grace and the love and the presence of God, that is always with us. One of my great hopes for our church, Heart of Steamboat, is that when we gather together, whether it's in person or online, I hope people gather together and can relax. I hope when we gather that we feel like we can breathe. We can take a breath. We can relax. It's okay. We're in the presence of people that love us and care about us and know about the struggles and the difficulty of life. And we share that together. We are known in that place. And you might think, well, I'm online. I don't really know anybody. Or you might think, well, maybe I'm a visitor, or maybe I haven't been around that much. Or maybe I've been to church a lot, but I don't really know people. How can they know me that way? Well, we might not know each other deeply in that personal sense, but we know each other, don't we? We all know we're struggling with things. We all know we're afraid of things. We all know we have hurts and pains. We know that most of us are just trying to do our best. And we show up at church or participate together because we're moved by the power of Christ and what it can do in our world, in our lives. So yeah, I hope when you're connected with our church that you feel like you can breathe, that you can relax. It might be the kind of place where you might say, you know what? I could say to you, oh, you don't feel like you have enough faith. You don't feel like you pray enough. You don't feel like you serve. You're trying to do better. You feel like you screw it up a lot. You feel like you mess up a lot. You don't get it right. You're always like, oh my gosh. Oh yeah. Yeah, me too. Yeah, I feel exactly like that too. Yeah, me too. It's good to see you. Let's relax. Let's take a breath and relax in the grace and the goodness of God, who says, come to me, all you who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. So we can all relax. And God bless you with peace and grace. Thank you for joining me.